Pros, save more on the materials you need to get the job done, inside and out, at Lowe's. Right now, get 10% off in-stock Trex Naturals decking, now available in more styles. Plus, get 15% off select custom entry, interior, and storm doors. Then, we'll deliver it all straight to your job site to help keep your jobs moving. Get the brands pros trust, priced right, and ready when you need them. Our best lineup is here at Lowe's. Valid through 5/27. While supplies last. Selection varies by location.
Hi, Randy. How are you?
I am doing great. I like that shirt. Is that green or black?
It's green.
Ah, okay. That's what I thought. So I always check out people's backgrounds, especially if there's guitars. I don't play, but I sure love guitars, and I always want to know about them. So I bet you have one laying around near you somewhere, don't you?
Yeah, I got this one right here. It's a little tiny thing.
Bigger than a ukulele, smaller than a normal guitar, right?
That's right.
Where are you clicking in from?
I'm at home.
Oh,
just got back from a we just got back from a tour. The wife and I put all the gear in a U-Haul in Fall River, Massachusetts Friday night, and did 1,600 miles in about 43 hours.
Holy
13
cow.
states.
Woo. Ooh, it's been a long time since I've done a road trip like that. It's I don't know that I ever have, actually. Most of mine have been east-west from Phoenix to Tennessee and back, something like that. But I think you maxed me out on that one. So
yeah.
Well, hey, I want to be respectful of your time. How much time do we have? And I'll tailor my questions to that.
You got as much time as you need, brother.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate that. I love this album, Mark. I've followed your career for a long time. I don't know why we haven't spoken sooner, but I'm glad we have now. I've loved your work, and your teaming with Bonamassa and his team is, I just think, nothing short of magical. And,
thanks, man.
So this new album is amazing. You built a career that kind of blends blues and soul and rock and R&B so naturally. Do you feel more focused in your sound today, or do you feel more free to explore?
Oh, I'm definitely more focused these days. And my albums are kind of all over the place. Just because I let the inspiration guide me, I let the muse take me wherever she's going to take me. But this project is one of the more cohesive of my career. This and my last original record, Time is a Thief, is the name of that record. These are definitely the most focused and most cohesive projects that I've ever put together.
Interesting. What do you feel has caused that cohesiveness to happen?
I would say probably both projects I wrote exclusively or almost entirely with one other writer. Not the same on both projects, but both projects have me and one other guy writing. And really, it's really one other guy arranging and me doing all the lyric writing. And so I think the arrangers in both of those projects had a tremendous amount of influence on how cohesive these projects were. Calvin Turner, who's Joe Bonamassa's bass player, happens to be one of my oldest friends in the world. He was my first sideman, and he's one of the finest arrangers on planet Earth. He's done all of my strings and all of my horns for 24 years now. And he sent me a batch of material. He sent me a batch of about 15 instrumental demos, really well fleshed out demos. And I just sat right here in this chair for 3 straight days and was like a madman. I couldn't pull myself away from the writer's chair. And 3 days later, we had this record.
Wow. I wonder if that sets a songwriter record or album making record for.
It does for me. I'll tell you that
what much. I bet. Well, Bonamassa, I'm sure, gives you. He's a musician's musician, and to work through his label, I guess, is, I mean, there's two or three other blues labels out there run by artists, but you know, I would have to imagine whether it's with Joe or with Mike Zito or any of the others, there's that extra level of freedom of creativity, I would imagine. Is that the case working in Joe's orbit?
Certainly. He's what I love working about working with Joe the most is uh, just how knowledgeable of the genre he is. He's an encyclopedia for the blues, and coming into the project, he wasn't convinced that the batch we brought to the table was gonna pass muster for the blues. And so we actually ended up writing three more tunes while we were in the studio. And I'm drawing a blank as to which songs got cut and what songs got cut out of the process. But once we had those other three tunes in the can that were pretty standard, there's a 12 bar called "You'll Be Sorry." There's another one called "Let Me Take You Out Tonight." That's kind of an old timey blues tune. And I'm drawing a blank on which is the third. But once we had those in hand, he was like, "All right, let's hit record." But Calvin is also extremely knowledgeable of the genre, and so as an arranger, he really was able to find the ways that we could push the edges as far as we could push them while still maintaining that blues integrity.
I do you find well, let me put to you how I am as a blues fan. I'm not a musician at all. I play a decent air guitar and that's about it. But the for me, blues kind of encompasses several different styles, going from almost a big band style to the old rock and grungy, dirty, sound. And that's the way I kind of lean towards. I kind of lean away from big band. And you've got one or two on there. I'm not saying I hate it, but if I was going to listen to blues for the rest of my life and somebody were to chart my clicks, I'd lean more towards some of the stuff. Yeah, but what I love about this album, Mark, is that you have a variation in there from that grungy that I just mentioned to stuff like, No More or Sweet Love. I sent that one to my new wife, and we both just love that song. It's
"Sweet Love" is probably my favorite song on the record.
Is it really? Wow.
Yeah.
Let me guess who that was written for you.
It should be no surprise. We celebrate 20. She and I celebrate 28 years together this year. I met her in high school, and we managed to. I'm blown away that she stuck it out with me, because I was a real jerk back in the day, but luckily she stuck it out with me, and now we travel together almost all the time. Anytime we have a long tour, she's out on tour with us. So it's been a nice ride, and I love writing songs for her.
I imagine her touring with you has helped a lot in helping the marriage work and stay together, has it not?
Yeah, not only that, she sells merch for me, and once the fans find out that my high school sweetheart is at the merch table, they flock to the table. So she also has helped the bottom line as much as it's helped the marriage.
All right, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, who else was doing that until his recent passing was Dave Mason.
Is that right?
There's others. Yeah, his wife Winifred was always worked the tables. In fact, the last time I saw Dave was right after I last interviewed him, and I went up to Winifred and I said, "Can I have my picture with you?" So I have my picture taken with. But yeah, you got to have somebody that has skin in the game to keep things honest and even.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. And I think my fans have always wanted to know that when they're at the merch table, that money that they're handing over is coming to me, and it's no more obvious than when she's at the table. They're certainly very well aware that it's coming to us. So it's been a real blessing.
She can answer questions too that maybe anybody else can't answer.
True.
Stories behind the albums, which one was which. Which song did you do that said this in the lyrics, and then that's on this album. I would bet.
Well, and interestingly enough, not everybody knows that she's my wife when they get to the merch table at the beginning of the show. And oftentimes, people will ask things like, "Where's the bathroom?" And she doesn't know. She has no idea. She doesn't work for the venue. And she'll tell them that. She's like, I'm sorry, I don't know. And sometimes they're kind of rude to her. And then they come to the show, and I say, by the way, my high school sweetheart's at the merch table. And then they really feel bad. And they come back
Awkward.
and they spend a little more money.
There you go. You can tolerate that then, right?
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Now, I read somewhere that you were once in a Christian rock band. Tell me a little bit more about that and the influence that had on you.
Yeah, so right after high school, my first job was as a music minister for a youth program at a church about 45 minutes from my house. And as part of that deal, one of the parishioners gave me a job mowing grass with him with his lawn care service. And another set of parishioners allowed me to live in an outbuilding on their property with their oldest son and his old buddy, his best friend. And both of those guys were also as part of the music ministry for the youth program. And it obviously just kind of developed naturally. We played every Sunday together. So living together, we would hang out with everybody that was in the music ministry program, and decided to put a band together. It was a band called Y, the letter Y, that had a bunch of different meanings, Yahweh and the Trinity, and all kinds of things. But that lasted for about 8 months, so it was pretty brief. I remember we went out to catch a show at a local bar, and the bar didn't have very strict ID requirements. And so I ordered a round of shots for everybody, which they were fine to take. But the bass player was like kind of scandalized a little bit because we were underage and drinking, and things kind of fell apart right after that.
Oh, man. Yeah.
It wasn't gonna, there wasn't, we had like 3 songs that we did a demo of. But I don't know that project really had the legs that my own careers had.
Were there specific CCM artists that kind of influenced you guys when you were, in that period of your work?
Man, it's been so long. And I'm trying to remember the guy's name. Like we were very Creed-esque. We were a very Creed-esque band, which was not necessarily my bag, but
right.
The guys were rock. They were real into rock and roll. Man, it's been so long since I've even thought about that stuff. There is certainly, there's a 3-name guy that I'm drawing a blank on his name. But he had put a record out right around the same time that I absolutely loved. And I'm totally drawing a blank on the guy's name. But no, it was, okay. There was a lot of praise and worship that we were doing back in those days. I'm really not sure, outside of the fact that my bandmates were such fans of hard rock. I'm not sure exactly why we chose to go down the path we did, because it certainly didn't complement my vocals the best. But nonetheless, it was a fun period.
Yeah, good deal. I was just curious. I was very actively involved in listening to CCM, but I'm a bit older than you. I'm about to turn 67 this fall, so I got a lot of those original guys, but I still follow some of them, and the best being Phil Keaggy on guitar.
Phil's great.
He's amazing, and the fact that he's still putting out music is stunning. So, but I was just curious what how deep that went for you and who the influences were and that kind of thing. Let's dive into the album itself that you have. That's the main reason why we're talking here. What's the story behind it? I mean, the title "Chance Worth Taking" it kind of suggests, in my mind, kind of a leap of faith. And what was the chance you were thinking about when you named the album?
Well, again, getting back to my co-writer on all this stuff, Calvin Turner, he was the catalyst to get me and Joe in the studio in the first place on a covers album, part of the S.O.S series, S.O.S.
Right.
4 Blues for the Soul. And he really did so by convincing me that I needed to take a stab at the blues genre, that it was well within my wheelhouse, and that there was no one in the genre that sang like I do. And as soon as we were done recording that covers project, he was like, okay, we need to do an original. And I'm like, okay, I'm in. I'm totally in. But we need to write this material. And so once again, he sent me a batch full of, instrumental demos, and I've sat here in the studio and wrote like a madman for 3 straight days. And part of that process was like just me getting up in the morning, sitting down here, opening my computer, opening the files, listening down to a few of them, and then picking one that I was particularly feeling that morning, calling Calvin, saying, hey, what do you have in mind for this song? You got any ideas? And sometimes he had nothing, but most often he had either a lyric idea or some kind of a melody idea that would certainly aid me in the process, because now I've got this song and I've got a direction from my co-writer to really start homing in on exactly what it was that I was trying to do. And with Chance Worth Taking, I want to say I remember him saying that lyric and singing the melody for me. And as soon as I was done with the song, I was like over the moon about it. And the title, as soon as I had the title, I realized that it was going to be the title track, because it's so indicative of what it is that Calvin and I were trying to do. We're trying to sort of shift me away from rhythm and blues into the blues categorically. And I thought the title suited the project more than any other.
Absolutely. Well, you mentioned the songwriting process took you 3 days to get that kind of nailed down. Once you guys went into the studio, from that point to the thing being mastered and, ready to hit store shelves, to use the old vernacular, how long was that process for you guys?
So we wrote the material probably 8 months before we went into the studio. And then we spent about 6 days in the studio tracking everything, with a few extra days after I was gone to get some background vocals done and all the strings and horns. And then it was mastered pretty quickly after that. But that was in January of 2025. So we've been sitting on this record for over a year, which is not typical for me. As an independent artist, my goal is to put out as much music as I possibly can. And so from recording to release has often been within 6 or 8 months at the most. So sitting on this record for over a year has been a bit torturous for me, to be quite honest with you, because I was chomping at the bit to play this stuff live. And luckily we got the opportunity on the last tour to play it live. And the fans reacted very, very positively.
So I want to make sure I understand something. I know Joe was, involved with you, to a certain level. How much in studio time with you was there? Did he just record it and Dropbox it to you, and then you
No,
guys...
no, we were in the studio 100% of the time together.
Wow.
The band that tracked this album is Joe's band. So Reese Winans on keys. I know he's recently retired, but Reese was still in the band at the time.
How
Calvin
lucky
on bass.
was that?
Man, well, I've known Reese for
Really?
probably 15 years, maybe even more than that, because Reese was in Lost Lonely Boys, and I opened for Lost Lonely Boys in I don't remember what year it was, but I did a bunch of tour dates with those guys. And Reese, the sweetheart that he is, would show up to the gig a little early and come and sit in with us for the last couple of tunes of our set. So I've known and loved Reese for a very, very long time and adore his playing. And especially on this record, I'm so glad that he was still in the band when we tracked this thing, Now, Joe's got a hell of a replacement in Locky Doley,
Yeah, he does.
but
Yep.
Reese does some really amazing things on this album that probably no other keyboard player in the world would have done. There's just these little tiny moments of flair, or these little weird voicings and walk downs that he does that every time I hear it, I just giggle because not only would nobody else play it, but nobody else could get away with it. Only a living legend could get away with some of this stuff, you know?
Yeah. Well, he's I mean, his pedigree is amazing, and I mean, my big thing with him is having played with Stevie Ray Vaughan, which, by the way,
Yeah.
I was at his funeral. I was in
Oh,
living
wow.
in Dallas long before I started Boomerocity. But yeah, good Dallas boy there. But I I have heard, I can't remember if I've read this or if I just had this feeling. I mean, the thing, and I promise you, this interview is not about Joe, but he seems to come up and naturally fit into this a lot. Did he bring a lot of discipline to the studio? Because he seems to me like one of those people that he knows the value of studio time, and he comes in, and I've picked it up on other interviews and in my own interviews with him, where he's like, he doesn't want to waste a second of that precious time. And is he more of a taskmaster, or does he just know
No.
how to navigate everybody or herd the cats?
Yeah, to be quite honest with you, um, he trusts the musicians immensely. He puts a lot of faith in guys' ability to play what they're supposed to play, and he's got one of the best bands on planet Earth, so they typically do play what they need to play. There's not a whole lot of direction, and especially as a vocalist, he's certainly not trying to direct me at all. Um, he's really just the glue that brings everybody together. And he's also the guide. If we're getting too far out of the lane, he's like, hey guys, we got to get back in the lane a little bit here. But he's certainly not an overbearing producer in any way at all. So it again, man, it's when you just have the best players on planet Earth in the room, things go quickly. And in fact,
Yeah.
both of the projects that we've done, we had to purposely slow down because we were going too fast.
Wow.
We could have knocked this record out in a couple or 3 days at the most. And the same goes for S.O.S. 4. We were on day 3, we were almost done tracking everything. We're like, hey, hold on, guys, let's go ahead and end early today. We got 6 days in the studio. Let's make the most of it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I want to definitely talk about the S.O.S. 5 album. But one more question tied to your album and going out on the road with it. The fact that you've had Joe's band behind you on the album, how has that translated to your band, your touring band? Does your touring band pretty much pick up on the ebb and flow and feel of the album, or has that been a challenge at all?
Yeah. So there are certain songs that are much more challenging. In fact, the title track, Chance Worth Taking, it does not translate live. Unfortunately, it just doesn't. It's such an epic tune on the record. And in rehearsals, it was just flat. It was just boring. Because it is kind of slow in those verse sections. It doesn't really ramp up until the solo section. And it was just kind of falling flat. And so I cut it from the set list. But we play, let me think about this. We play You'll Be Sorry, These Walls, which I think is the best track that we do in the live set right now. We were doing Blame for a second, but it was vocally very taxing on me. And I pulled that one out in favor of something else. I can't remember. We do Laissez les Bon Temps Rouler to close the set. I'm drawing a blank on it. Anyways, we do about 5 tunes or 6 tunes from the new album, and they all sound great. They all sound amazing. My guitar player, luckily, is a very, very good guitar player, and works very, very hard at recreating the sounds that we get off this album, and helped me learn some of the parts that I needed to learn as well, so that he could have the freedom to go and do the lead parts. So they're translating quite well, and where they're not, we're not playing them.
By the way, another one on this album I absolutely love is No More.
Yeah.
That's a great song there. So.
And I've had several female fans come up to me angrily asking if I was leaving my wife because of that song.
Boy, you know how that's going to go. So you better not ever let that happen. Right?
No, man. We're going to make it.
Good deal. So switching gears on this S.O.S. 5 album, tell viewers about that, because I mean, you've touched on it some. I want them to know more about that.
So the very first covers album that I did, S.O.S. 1, was really in response to being released from a record contract after I made a sophomore effort for Island Def Jam. My first album for Island Def Jam was an album called Karen Crow. I made a second album, and the new CEO at the time, a guy named L.A. Reid, decided that he didn't want to release that second album. So I asked to be let out of my contract. They agreed to let me out, but they didn't let me take the record that I had just recorded, and they prevented me from re-recording any of that material as well for 8 years. So instead of going back into the writer's room, and at the time my writing process was quite a bit slower than it is today, it would have taken at least 6 or 8 months to get another album worth of material. And we really needed to get a project out. It had been 2+ years since Karen Crow had come out, and show bookers, promoters, they really like to see other kind of promo activity when you're on tour. They don't want to be carrying the load all on their own. And so with no other promo activity, the shows were kind of drying up, and we needed something to get back on the road. And somebody suggested we do a covers album. And luckily that effort was very, very successful. Got us back out on the road, sold a ton of records, and was very well received by my fans. And the goal behind that record was really just to introduce, because my fan base at the time was very young. They were all my age. We were in our 20s. It was to introduce my younger fans to the music that had kind of shaped my childhood and shaped my sound. So we really, we tracked those albums. I mean, we tracked those songs as close to the originals as we possibly could, because we wanted to catch lightning in a bottle for a second time. And fast forward to when I went independent just over a decade ago, I called up my manager and I said, we should do these covers records. And he was like, yeah, that sounds great. And I was like, we should do it and give the money away. And he was like, that's a terrible idea. You're broke. You don't have any money. And I said, I think we should do this. I don't know why, but it's on my heart to make these covers albums and to raise money for charitable causes that we're passionate about. And they were very skeptical. And luckily, S.O.S. 2, the first charity project that we did, was even more successful than virtually anything that I had ever done. There's a song that we recorded, a Solomon Burke tune called Cry to Me. That's easily my most popular song. And as soon as my managers saw just how successful that project was, they were like, whatever you want to do, buddy, you got it. We'll back you for the rest of your life on this stuff, man. Just keep going with your heart, keep going with your gut. And so every few years we put out these S.O.S. records, and we raise money for charitable causes. S.O.S. 5 happens to be partnered with a local charity here in Lafayette called Love of People that has a really broad mission. We have my wife and I volunteered for the organization for years now, mostly through what they call the Blue Monday Project, which is once a month concert series that employs aging musicians here in the area. The founder of Love of People also has a private company that's sort of a life concierge service. They do everything from mow grass to transport to doctor's visits to in-home hospice care. And through participating in Blue Monday, these aging musicians not only get paid really well, but they also get access to that quality of life services company. And that's how I got introduced to the organization. And then I became really close with the founder and found out exactly what else they were doing throughout the year. And it blew me away at how much he was doing. We got diaper drives and food drives and toy drives. We fed about 5,000 people last Thanksgiving. It's
Wow.
an incredibly broad mission that really touches a lot of people in this community. And I'm very, very, very happy to be supporting the organization with SOS 5.
There's something that people want to call it the universe, the energy, the power, whatever. I just call him God. Something about how God created the heavens and the earth and wired us all and wired things, the universe, in a way that once you give and you give without thinking about getting genuinely in your heart, it seems to come back to you, doesn't it?
Oh my goodness, you have no idea. Not only has the SOS project allowed me to raise these charity dollars, and that was the only mission. That literally was the only mission going in. I just wanted to give. What what's come out of it has been, not only do I get to record some of my favorite music from the past, it also gives me extra time to focus on the original projects, to really home in on the best writing that I can bring to the table. Um, it services my audience with music more often than would otherwise be the case. And again, it has allowed us to bless several different organizations. We pick a different charity for each project. So we've supported a homeless women and children shelter that boasts 98% success rates getting people off the streets permanently through a very comprehensive program that involves the Culinary Training Institute. Um, we've supported a children's hospital in Baton Rouge that expanded this region's ability to care for chronic and terminal children by something like 180,000 patients a year. We supported a group that Joe's organization has worked with a bunch called Guitars Over Guns that really just aims to get kids in inner city environments involved in music to keep them off the streets. And then now with SOS 5, Love of People, that again has an incredibly beautiful mission. You're 100% right that God has blessed me tenfold because I stepped out on faith and said, it's really, honestly, I'll tell you exactly the moment it happened. So I was about a week before my 33rd birthday, and I'm 44 now. And I realized in this single moment a twofold realization. One, that I had always sort of believed in the Robert Johnson sell your soul at the crossroads story, that I had always put some kind of stock in the notion that I could summon the forces of darkness and somebody would show up and I could make some kind of a compromise or deal and receive success, knowing that there was some tragedy that I was going to have to deal with down the road. And at the same time, I realized that I had never thought similarly about the inverse, that I had never thought that I could summon the forces of good and make a similar deal, except avoid the tragedy.
Right.
Soul's ability to enter into eternity with God. And in that moment, in that exact moment, I looked to the heavens and I said, I'm yours. I'm yours forever. Do with me what you will. I'm going to move on your commands. And pretty soon after that, the idea for the SOS series came. The SOS series came into my mind. Luckily, everything has worked out swimmingly.
Well, you brought up Robert Johnson and the Crossroads. I'm reminded in one of my conversations with Rory Block. I don't know if you're familiar with her, old time blues gal, but she knew or knows Johnson's I guess, grandson or great grandson that's over the Robert Johnson thing. I don't know if it's a foundation or what, but he says that Robert Johnson didn't sell his soul to the devil, that it was a God thing. But the devil thing was, gave it pizzazz. I don't know who started it. I don't know all the details on it. I've reached out to that relative to try to interview him, and I haven't heard back from him. But that would be interesting if that was actually the case. I just want the truth either way, but
Sure.
if it was actually polar opposite of what we're all thinking or been told, that would be that would say a lot in and of itself. And
No
to
doubt.
your point,
No doubt.
But what do you think the songs in the S.O.S. series? I mean, there's something timeless about those. What do you think artists from that era got right that causes those songs to still resonate today? Because some of them were written back when our grandparents were young,
Sure. And that's a really interesting question. I don't know exactly what it is that makes a song timeless, outside of the fact that it just resonates with a massive group of people. Time. A buddy of mine sent me a graph years ago. It was called the Gulf of Disapproval, and it was a graph that tracked the sale of a widget, essentially any widget, and it was time over ubiquity. Essentially, it was time over people knowing about the product, and what it did was tracked people that accepted the product and people that rejected the product. And as time moves, those two lines sort of track straight up. At some point, knowledge of the product becomes ubiquitous, and either people like it or they don't.
Right.
And I've got a theory about the music business that the deeper you get into a career, for example, or the longevity of a song, the more socially unacceptable it is to say that you don't like that thing. So, for example, Bonnie Raitt, that ubiquitous inflection point happened really deep into her career. So much so that if you were at a party after Nick of Time and said, nah, Bonnie's not for me, she had already had 20 plus years of fandom, and now Nick of Time is out and the people that love her grows immensely. You can't be at a party and say, nah, that's not for me, without a bunch of people in that room saying, what are you talking about? She's a legend. Whereas a band like Nickelback just kind of arrives and immediately everybody knows who they are, and they flamed out quick, even though they were a great band. But there wasn't enough social cover by the fans and enough time for those fans to essentially stave off the haters. So I think once you have a song that's been as popular as Unchained Melody for as long as it's been popular, it's socially unacceptable to say that that's a bad song.
Right. How much of that do you think? I mean, to me, I can see three elements that can affect that longevity. One would be, back in the old days, especially, the labels and the radio network.
Sure.
Radios doesn't know it yet, but it's dead. It's gone to streaming and YouTube,
podcasting,
and all that.
Sure.
Right, exactly. But we'll just call it airplay in whatever format that is. And then I think a third element is how many people start recording those songs, start covering those songs that get it known. I mean, Unchained Melody, you named, is a perfect example. I mean, Elvis covered it.
Yeah.
What more of an endorsement do you need? So, to me, how much of that, and for me, I think there's another element there that's kind of, and I swear I don't have any of this written down because I didn't know we were going to get to this point. But you have early adopters and you have late adopters. I'm typically on technology a late adopter.
Yeah.
Certain artists, I'm an early, hey, help get the word out. Others, I'm still learning. There's people I've been pitched for years, and when I finally listen to them, I go, holy crap, this is good. Why didn't I listen sooner? That kind of thing. So I'm really in that late adopter category. Do you, in this chart that you're talking about, how much of that are you aware of that affects that today versus how it was in the old days?
I think there's still an element of, we still have payola. It went away from radio, but it is still very prominent in the streaming world. These record labels can buy streams, as many streams as they want to, and it's completely legal to do. I think so that's really driving virality. Hype is always, there's a great book I read years ago called Hit Makers: The Science of Virality in an Age of Distraction. And there's a really interesting anecdote in that book about impressionism as a genre of art. So there was a guy named Caillebotte who was sort of a well-to-do French guy. He loved impressionism. He was a painter himself, but because he was already wealthy, he didn't have to paint as much as his contemporaries like Degas. However, he would also buy up his friends' unsold impressionist works. And by the time he died, he had the biggest collection of impressionism in the world. And he died and bequeaths his collection to the state on the condition that they build a special wing just for impressionism in the National Museum of Art in France. And what it did was triggered a lawsuit that lasted for 25 years, because the art elite in France at the time didn't consider impressionism as a valid form of art. And it wasn't until after a 25-year legal battle that the elite in the art world in France said, well, clearly this is an art form because we've been fighting over it for the last 25 years. So there's an element of hype that literally legitimized what was previously thought illegitimate. I think hype is a big part of what we see today and virtually forever when it comes to art. Again, man, I just get back to this Gulf of Disapproval graph that I'm so grateful my buddy sent it to me, because it's allowed me to keep my eye on the ball, and it's allowed me to be comfortable exactly where I am. I would much rather have a career like Bonnie Raitt than have flamed out early.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think consistency and being persistent and steady as she goes, I think, the whole tortoise and the hare thing, I think there's a lot to that. And
well, I know Joe Rogan's spoken about with regards to his podcast. He attributes quite a bit of the success to consistency, to the fact that fans could count on episodes every single week.
Yep. I'm hoping that's what my viewers do. I mean, I'm at this in my 18th year now.
Wow.
Video happened during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And that kind of drugged me, kicking and screaming, because, I have a face made for radio. So I just didn't want that out there. But this is so much better.
Yeah, no doubt.
And so, if I could just put the black dot over my face, I'll have it made. But I love big traffic numbers, obviously, but I do what I do for the love of it. And I have to think persistency and consistency keeps things going. I'm not the biggest one out there.
I had a soccer coach when I was a kid. I played on a team that was together for a number of years, and she was this fiery older gal, little tiny thing, but she was a hell of a soccer coach. And we would take shots on the goal, and it would hit a crossbar or it hit an upright bar, and it was always so close. It would happen so often. You have no idea how many times we took shots on goal that ended up hitting a crossbar or an upright. And she would just say, keep knocking. They got to let you in. And another buddy of mine, Will Hogue, I remember we finished the tour together and we're saying our goodbyes, and he's walking out of the building and he tells me, he turns around and says, keep going, Bruce. Keep going. You're never going to make it if you quit. And man, I thought about that. It stayed with me for so long. He's not saying that you're going to succeed if you stay in the game. What he's saying is you absolutely can't succeed in this business if you get out.
That's right.
And so persistency is certainly something that I hold near and dear to my heart as well.
Well, you and I are in the same boat, and I want to help you with that. So in the future, whenever you have a new album or a new project you want the word to get out on, I'd be honored if you reached out to me and let me know, or if I hear about it, I'll reach out to you.
Absolutely.
And, I'll do my part. I'm not Rolling Stone magazine, thank God, but that's my Joe Bonamassa story. My second interview with him, I could tell he's kind of in a bad mood, but right towards the end, I mean, I was just trying to keep things positive and all that, and I brought up his deal that he did at the Ryman during the pandemic. And I asked him, said something about that. Oh my gosh, that lit a fuse.
Oh no.
Not towards me.
Sure.
And I mean, he went off on Rolling Stone magazine like I've never heard anybody go off on it. And he was, that's a hill I'll effing die on. And, I was like, keep talking, Joe. This is great. So it was funny. But yeah, go ahead.
Joe's a very passionate guy. He's a very, very passionate guy. And I think to a certain extent, Joe, he's a white guy from upstate New York playing the blues. And I think that he's been looked down upon by industry players in a way that really is very undeserved. He's clearly reaching the audience. He's very, very obviously succeeding at reaching people. And that's the name of the game. Like, that's the whole thing. Can you reach an audience and sustain an audience? And he's doing it better than almost anybody out there. Absolutely. And, there are a lot of people that wish that they had his kind of success, and certainly people out there that will never have his kinds of success think that he somehow doesn't deserve it or didn't earn it, when the reality is exactly the opposite. Not only did he put in the work, but he's also clearly, very, very clearly reaching the audience in a way that is meaningful. So I don't blame him. And screw the haters, Joe. Screw them.
That's right.
I love you, pal.
Yeah. The other one in his team is Josh Smith. I love him too, man.
Josh is great.
Good guy. He produced the album of a friend of mine, Andy Timmons, and they both have stories about that whole process that are pretty good. But anyway, Marc, this is so fun. I enjoyed every second of it, and I look forward to talking to you more in the future. And, if there's, I don't know if you'll remember me 10 minutes from now, but if I happen to come in mind as far as one of those that can help get the word out, please let me know. My door is always open to you. If I see something out there on you, like I said a minute ago, I'll initiate one way or another. I want to help you, man. So
I really appreciate that, Randy. Thank you so much. And I'm more than happy to come back anytime, brother. All
right, man. Well, I look forward to seeing you in concert sometime. I had to miss the Chattanooga one. I live in two places in East Tennessee. I was closer to Knoxville, but I was wanting to run down to your show in Chattanooga, and I think I was getting married around then, something like that.
Oh, gotcha.
I couldn't exactly say I want to go to the Marc Broussard show. So anyway, I'm going to keep an eye on your itinerary, and whether it's here in South Carolina or over in Tennessee somewhere. I'm going to meet you, get backstage, shake hands, hug your neck, and
absolutely
chat a quick minute. So anyway, stay safe, stay healthy, stay married, and we'll talk to you down the road.
All right, brother. Take care.
All right. Take care, man.
This has been another fun-filled episode of Boomerocity with your host and producer, Randy Patterson. The theme song for Boomerocity is Roll the Dice and is recorded and used by permission from Quentin Hope. Quentin is spelled Quinten, and Hope is Hope. as in Paul, E. And you can find out more about Quentin Hope and his music at quentinhope.com. Post-production is done by Cardinal Sins Productions. The Boomerocity name, logo, and content is copyright protected. Segments may only be used with written permission by Boomerocity and or its assignees. Inquiries should be directed to input@boomerocity.com. Copyright 2026.